Hello and welcome to another podcast. This is Papanikolis and today we have a bull inside the studio. RoguePLC will try to catch it.
And with me today is the one and only Tbull, CC with World of Warships. Thank you for being with us here today, Tbull.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's wonderful having you here. After all this time, a lot of people have been asking for you to come, and we've been really blessed to have you with us so we can do this podcast with you.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
First of all, let's start with just a little background of yourself. And if you could, as far as I understand, you were also a part of World of Warships in the alpha build itself. Could you tell me a little more from where you started with World of Warships up to now?
Yeah, I got into the alpha. I'll go back to the World of Tanks. I probably played World of Tanks for roughly 6 months before the alpha of World of Warships came out. And so I was kind of involved on forums on that game, and then probably picked up some information saying the alpha for World of Warships is coming. I thought, I didn't know that much about the game, but I thought I'll give it a shot. And basically you just messaged someone from Wargaming, I can't remember who, saying you're interested. I did that, and I said, sure, you're in the alpha, and proceeded to play through that, and absolutely got destroyed, because I think most of the people in the alpha were PC players that knew what they were doing. So I know what it's like to be a completely new player playing against experienced players. But played that alpha, then that lasted for about a month or so. And then I think the game was released a couple months after that, at least in the what they termed the early access phase of the game. I just happened to kind of hear about it and decided it sounded like fun and give it a whirl, and here I am.
Was there a reason you left World of Tanks itself?
Frankly, it just came down to I was trying to make World of Tanks videos, and I was getting 30 views, 50 views on those videos, and I thought, hey, I'm doing pretty good here. And then World of Warships came out. I happened to be on the leading edge of the people making content for that, and my views went up, to 300 views or something like that per video, and I was like, well, if this is what I'm getting some eyeballs on the channel for, I guess I'll keep doing it. So I started off as a new player, but I kind of got into really studying the game because I knew from World of Tanks there's a lot of background learning that's kind of required to play the game at a higher level. So I really kind of immersed myself in trying to learn the game. And then I kind of viewed my role as just kind of communicating that information on to as many people that cared to listen, because these type of games, they definitely become more fun the more the experienced players are in a given game. If I can help people learn the game and get better at it, then it benefits me because it makes the game more enjoyable, and it hopefully helps the game as a whole.
Let's look at your name, for example, Tbull. Everybody knows the name, but your gamer tag is not Tbull. It's Boogerteer's Fist. Why was this chosen? I know apparently you've discussed it on stream, but most of our listeners don't really know why it was this persona that you chose and the name.
I'm from Minnesota, and we have a hockey team, Minnesota Wild, here, and there was a player on the team called Derek Bugard, and back in, it's not as relevant of a role in hockey anymore, but there used to be the guy that was kind of responsible for fighting on the team, and they would kind of protect their players, and so he was like one of the best at that role in the NHL. And so I was looking for a gamer tag that, if you're playing Call of Duty, it said killed by, and then whatever your name is. And I thought it was pretty funny, killed by Bugard's Fist, because those are definitely not something you'd want to be encountering in real life. So that's the background on that.
Oh, I didn't even know you liked playing Call of Duty that much.
Yeah, I played from, I think it was Call of Duty 3. It was a World War II one until probably about 4 or 5 versions of Call of Duty after that. I was pretty dang good at it. Eventually, the realization came upon me that they just kept releasing the same game over and over and over again, and you were paying hundreds of dollars just for new maps. So I kind of got sick of it and abandoned playing that game. But yeah, for probably about 5 years, I was pretty big into Call of Duty. Something
I've also, and I know a lot of people noticed, is that you've got a new logo. What's up with that? Did something happen? Did you just move on from the old one?
The old one, it wasn't my work, so technically someone out there made it, and it's basically a screen grab of a scene in the Grateful Dead movie. There's an animated scene in this movie called The Grateful Dead Movie, which is kind of a documentary about the band, The Grateful Dead. And I'm a huge fan of that band. So, I just used the logo for my YouTube or Gmail account name for years. And then after a while, I'm like, well, if I'm going to have a quasi-professional YouTube channel, I better get something that I actually own the rights to. So I just went about designing the new logo just for that. I mean, I don't think it would ever have been a problem, but technically I didn't really own the rights to that previous logo. So that's why I just decided to go with the new one.
You telling me you designed it yourself?
Well, I went to a website that has the ability to design stuff for you, essentially. But yeah, I mean, there's pre-existing designs and fonts and all that stuff, and you can manipulate it how you want and come up with a logo. So I'm not going to sit here and say I was going pixel by pixel to plug it in the colors or anything, but to the best of my ability, I designed it, yes.
No, it's still spot on. We all love it. Tbull, I need to ask you, what's your obsession with Dewey?
Oh, George Dewey. Well, a lot of people, he's relatively unknown today, but in the 1890s, he was the equivalent of a rock star. So he's a baller. No, why I'm obsessed with him? If you were around early in the game, they didn't have the legendary system part of the commanders. So basically, you were getting these duplicates, and I think they were giving you like 100,000 blue stars, 200,000, whatever it was, Commander XP, if you got the duplicate, and it didn't go towards leveling up a guy in terms of legendary. So I think out of a span of 10 weeks, I got 8 duplicate George Deweys. Meanwhile, my fans on the channel are begging, we need Iowa, we need Colorado, we need coverage of this. So I got a level 8 George Dewey out there that can't hit the broadside of a barn. And, it just became an aggravating factor for me that kind of grew into a legend. So he's become kind of a joke around the channel. No offense to George Dewey, I'm sure he's a fine guy in his own right, but from the video game perspective, he's a little bit frustrating for me.
I remember those days getting Dewey all the time. It was so frustrating. I mean, it took me almost 6 months just to get some of the other guys I really wanted.
Yeah. I think Sims was the second to last one that I ever got, and he was like the one I wanted the most from when the game launched. So very aggravating, but luckily they improved that system after a lot of feedback from the players.
When it comes to all the other content creators and all the other guys out there making content for World of Warships, you're not really like the same. You don't act the same way as them. You're not, as active on official groups or Facebook or Reddit or Discord even. You kind of keep it to your own channel and you're happy to stay there. Is there any reason behind this? Because you kind of people been calling you out for like being a rebel.
Oh, well, yeah, that was kind of news to me. I'll give you 2 reasons. Number one, if you want to take Facebook, for instance, I don't have a Facebook account anymore. I did years ago, but I got off of that. But if you want to look at like Reddit, for instance, I could chime in there and try and be more of a dominant voice, but I already have my channel that has a really good following, and like I have an outlet for my opinion. So if anyone's interested in what I have to think, they already have access to that. Whereas there's people that spend a lot of time on Reddit, they write really well thought out guides on there, and I kind of view it as let's leave the space for those guys that want to contribute in their own way. And so I don't really feel the need to try and stick my nose in there. And then the second reason just boils down to time. I mean, I work a full-time job, usually 40 hours a week, but like the last 2 weeks, for instance, I work 65 hours both those weeks. So I'm going to work at 9 in the morning, getting back anywhere from 6 to 8 at night, making dinner quick, hopefully putting together a video, which takes several hours. So, I mean, by the time it's all said and done, a lot of times, all right, the video is uploaded and it's 11:30 at night. And when would I have time to spend a lot of time doing the other things? It's just a lot of the content creators you might be comparing myself to perhaps don't have to work as much, or whatever their situation is. I have no idea, but maybe they just have more time for it, whereas I really don't. So It's like I'll pretty much every day I'll get several requests on my PlayStation to play with people, and it's not that I wouldn't want to play with a bunch of people. I certainly would, but I just don't have the time to do it. So would you guys want me to just stop making videos and then spend more time on Reddit or whatever? It just kind of boils down to that. So, but I just kind of do my own thing, and if anyone enjoys it, they're certainly able to tune in and see what I'm up to.
We've actually got some questions from the community as well. Now, please, community, don't go down on me because I might pronounce your name or your gamer tag wrong or your username. So I'm going to try my best to try and read this as it should be. Matija990, he's asking, I'd be curious to hear what he thinks are the top and the bottom ships in the game, or maybe just the ones he loves or loves to hate. Also, his thoughts on premium ships versus that of the tech tier counterparts. Lots of the new players are often confused as to what they represent.
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think from a design standpoint, the goal of wargaming, and I think they do a pretty good job of it, is to create variety between the classes and between the different national branches, the sub-branches between the classes, and make them all viable and kind of give them all their own roles. So, yes, there are ships that tend to do better than others, but as a whole, I always try and approach the game with the idea that, all right, this is the ship, this is what it's capable of. Can you, as the player, figure out how to make it work? And that's part of the challenge of the game. And, that's part of the reason I like to play all the different lines and all the different classes. But for me, I mean, I tend to like, if you're saying, all right, here's a chance to win $1 million, what are you going to get into? I'd probably play like a Megami, or I really like the Japanese cruisers. I really like the British cruisers. If the destroyers currently have an elevated role, so I don't know if I really can say, these ships are overpowered or these ships aren't. I feel like they all have their own place, if that makes sense.
Let's say, what's your first love? What would you rather pick when you start the game out? What's that special ship that you really always want to go to and say, I'm going to do good in this ship and I'm going to play it?
Yeah, there's certain ships. I mean, like I really like the Warspite, for instance. I think that's probably the most accurate battleship in the game. I tend to like ships that have good accuracy, because I feel like I can aim the shots pretty well, and as long as the game can direct the shells where I want them to go, I'm feeling pretty good about it. But yeah, I think cruisers as a whole are probably the strongest class once you understand how to play them, and you can have the most impact on them. Part of the reason the game's interesting is it is a team game. You can't go out there and win by yourself. It's impossible to win a 1v9. Let's say all your teammates just evaporate right off the bat. You're not going to win that game, for instance. And so you got to kind of understand what your team's doing and then play around them. Like, I'm primarily a solo player. A lot of players play in divisions, which I think is better for your sanity. But as a solo player, you got to kind of keep an eye on, all right, this is what the opportunity that my team is presenting me. This is what the opportunity that the enemy team is presenting. How can I capitalize on it? And that's kind of the challenge. And,
I hear you on that, most definitely. Especially when it comes to this team. People complaining about red team, blue team. It's always the red team, always the blue team that struggles, and the red team that always wins.
It's all a matter of perspective, really. I mean, I try and point that out, because if you watch me play the game live on stream, I get as frustrated as the next guy. It's just inherently kind of a frustrating game, but it's a matter of perspective. Like, I can look across the map and see someone on my team, and basically the idea is, well, why aren't they doing exactly what I want them to do? But I'm not 100% sure what they're dealing with over there, what they can see, what their thought process is. So it may not be apparent to me as a player what they're doing, and I might have ideas of what I would prefer them to be doing, but maybe it's not viable, or the blue team affects you more than the red team in a lot of ways, which is why the frustration exists from time to time.
Well, there's another one. JamPBR is asking, if by chance the communication wheel was banned from the game, would he still be playing?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the more controversial aspects of my game. I hit the radio comms pretty hard, and some people, that definitely annoys them. If you really watch what I'm doing with the radio, though, I'm not spamming Neptune's beard or whatever just to be a goofball. But usually I'll fire the radio up when there's an enemy destroyer spotted, or if we really need to get on that cap now, and if we don't, we're conceding the game, stuff like that. So, like, I have a lot of experience in this game. I played over 10,000 games, which certainly is above average, so I can kind of evaluate a game at any given moment and say, okay, this is what really needs to happen if we want to win the game. And, that's when the comms will fire up. So, I'm not 100% right. Sometimes my evaluation's wrong and we'll win or lose despite what I think we should be doing. But as a rule, when the enemy destroyer is spotted, everyone on the team needs to shoot him. They need to kill him. Like, if the enemy destroyer becomes spotted, it's a mistake not to sink that. And that's usually a turning point in the game. So I don't have a problem firing up the commands and saying there's a destroyer 4 or 5 times until the game says, you spam the comms too much. I'm not letting you do it. And that annoys some people. I understand that. Not shooting destroyers annoys me just as much as people that spam the comms. So I don't necessarily apologize for it. I understand that some people look at it and say, I don't like the guy's attitude or whatever when it comes to the communication, but it is what it is. Well, I want to point out too, like, for a very brief time when I was playing World of Tanks, I would get on the microphone, and the game is somewhat rage-inducing to begin with. So for me, it's not fun for other people to get yelled at on the mic, so I intentionally don't use the microphone just because I'm not 100% sure I can control myself in every instance. So this is really the only way that I'm allowing myself to communicate with the enemy team, my own teammates. The information, there's the destroyer. That is the turning point in the game. If it gets away, we're probably going to lose. If it doesn't, we're probably going to win,
A question here from SK Moose. And it's kind of boiling down to one of the other questions we had. I'm genuinely curious to know your top 1 to 3 ships to run in standard battle when you just want to enjoy the game. Are you still able to fire up the game just for funsies? And Tbull, just what is the single most important skill that nearly everyone should learn or spend more time improving based on the state of the game?
Oh, that's a great question. Just in case I forget that last part, make sure I get back to that one. But in terms of ships I like to play for fun, I try not to play the Arkansas too much, but if you're trying to get some dev strikes, that's a great ship because there's a lot of raised citadels at Tier 3, and it's a very accurate battleship. Warspite, Megami, pretty much any Japanese cruiser. I mean, the Fiji, the Edinburgh, I like the Vladivostok, the Sinop, the Peter, Königsberg. There's Prince Eugene, Eugen. There's a lot of different ships, I guess. That'd be hard for me to narrow down. And that's my approach to the game. I like to play everything. Number 1, because variety is the spice of life. But number 2, understanding if you see that ship on the enemy team, what can that thing do? It's a lot easier to know that if you got experience in that ship. But I think the ones that I've listed are probably among my favorites. But in terms of the most important skill, it's 100% armor angling. Like, conceptually, when I'm playing the game, if you're really, really focused on armor angling, protecting yourself first and foremost, and then dealing the damage, that's when you're playing at a high level. And it's very easy, if you're not really dialed in at that moment, to get away from that, because it is kind of mentally exhausting almost to just constantly be focusing on that. But if you're protecting yourself first and foremost, you're going to stay alive longer. And then, okay, maybe I only got the back 2 guns on that guy right now, but I live to fight another day. I live to give more salvos. Whereas if I maybe get tempted to show the full broadside just to get 1 full salvo off, well, if I get killed doing that, they may get hit by 2 or 3 more shells this instance, but now all of a sudden I'm done firing for the rest of the game. So armor angling is 100% the most important thing in my mind. And I think anyone that doesn't fully understand that should be their starting place to really focus on learning about.
A question from Zulu508. How long has he been in management? His elite level of sarcasm just screams of the guy whose job it is to constantly listen to excuses and fixing other people's problems.
Yeah, I actually am a manager. I manage a liquor store. People that always ask me what I do, that's what I do right now. Been doing that for about 3 years now, but I don't think my sarcasm necessarily stems from that. I mean, my personality's been pretty consistent throughout the years, so I think that's just who I am. I mean, I got a very, my sense of humor is what it is, and some people really get it, and a lot of people don't, you know. But, you know, that's just my personality. That's how I've always been.
Alejandro 17 PS4. Do you play with the team or for the team? Playing with the team is staying close to them, and playing for a team is breaking away from the pack and to make to make sure that you get the win, which sometimes is seen as selfish play when it does work out.
That's an interesting question. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the premise of it. I mean, basically, you have your initial deployment where you spawn in on, and then as the game develops, where you need to be is dictated by the circumstances on the ground. So I don't go out of my way to stay by the team, nor do I go out of my way to kind of go off on my own. I mean, usually if you find yourself in a position where you're on your own, that can be untenable because number one, you may not get the spotting need to do anything. Number two, if you got 4 ships near you that you're the only thing that they can see, they're all going to shoot at you. And if you have 4 ships shooting you at once, you're not going to live very long. It doesn't really matter the situation. So, but the two extremes, I definitely, you know, I joke about black holes and stuff a lot, and that's just my way of saying, you know, there's gravitational influence where everyone on the team happens to be in the same square on the map. That's not good either. So you got to keep an eye on the map. You got to keep an eye on the flow of the game. You got to understand, you know, if this is a domination mode game, how can we get the caps and focus on that. But the positioning, like I was kind of alluding to earlier, I kind of try and play around my team as best as possible. But it just comes down to what's required, in my opinion, at any given point in time in the game. What do I need to be doing? And that's something you need to be constantly asking yourself because it can change very rapidly given the circumstances. From my perspective, it's an interesting game because I come from the perspective I'm a pretty competitive player. I want to win every single game I load into, but I understand a lot of players that are out there don't have the same goals that I do. But I think the improvements that I would make for the game would be designed to try and educate the players as best as possible. Because part of the reason that I was drawn towards World of Tanks and World of Warships, my background in World of Tanks is I downloaded the game. I just saw it as a free game. Well, okay, I'll try it, and I like playing it, and it's kind of a shooter, you know. So I'm playing the game, and then it dawned on me, man, you really suck at this. You know, what's going on? Why am I losing half the games that I'm in? That's not my usual track record as a video game player. So I went online and I discovered, oh, armor angling's a thing, spotting. You know, there's all these advanced concepts, and so it's kind of it's intriguing to me. It draws me in that you kind of have to do a deep dive on the game and really learn how to play the game at a high level. But then the problem is once you get into that zone where, okay, I've learned how to play the game, I'm pretty accomplished, I know what I'm doing, then everyone around you that hasn't taken the time to do that, it's very glaringly obvious when that's the case. So, and a lot of it's just most of the players aren't going to take the time to do that investigation. So, like adding a spotting damage counter, for instance, I think when your average player or casual player would see, okay, what's that number going up for? They might try and figure out what that is. Spotting. Oh, I've never heard of spotting. What? Okay, well, this is an interesting concept. Oh, now that might give them a clue. Like as a destroyer player, I'd rather have a destroyer player on my team that didn't launch a single torpedo, but did an outstanding job spotting and capturing the bases. You know, so I think just putting the spotting counter in there and maybe a little bit of an explanation of what it is, I think that would go a long way to improve that aspect of the game. Loading screens, I think that's an opportunity for education along these lines. There's plenty of information that needs to be given to the players that, again, you have to kind of do a deep dive on it right now, which is what it is. But I think, you could, and my challenge, I've put this challenge out there. I never saw anyone respond to it, but I want us players, write a 20-point tips and put them on Reddit and say, Wargaming, consider putting these on the loading screens. And maybe if someone does the work for them, makes it very easy for them, and they look at them and they say, that would actually help the education of the game, then they'll go ahead and put them in there. So they're very responsive to the community, and we can help them along those lines. Let's see, what else would I change? I thought I had a third one, but I can't recall. But basically, I'm very pro education, and I'm pro trying to improve the gameplay overall, because this game really shines when everyone's on the same page and they're playing with a knowledge of what needs to be done. So I think maybe explaining like the service costs, because I think the misconceptions of the service costs is kind of what's crippling your legendary tier right now. People think if I get sunk, I'm going to lose a bunch of money. They don't understand you pay the service cost the second you hit ready, and then your goal in that game should be to earn the credits by actually doing something useful, rather than firing up your rocket boosters, landing on the moon, and then watching the game unfold through the Hubble telescope. That's going to lose you a lot of money. So stuff like that. I would like to see them put a tutorial in there. They've said they don't want to do it because nobody uses it, and I understand that if it's resource intensive and it's underutilized, then I guess it's not worth their time. But it would be nice, I just think as much as we can do to help players understand the rules of the game, the scoring, the strategy, the armor angling, the shell selection, everything about it that isn't necessarily 100% glaringly obvious, I think would go a long way to improving the game overall, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just kind of like when I see that tip coming up on the screen when I load up my game. Don't go through the middle. Even though I've been a sneaky snake in the past and actually went through the middle.
My favorite one is destroyers should hide behind their bigger ships to try and surprise the enemy. It's like, oh my god, please get rid of that.
Well, yes, I've actually got an interesting one here that's actually coming from Vilagula, from Wargame itself. And he's actually asking, which one of live, love, or love is the most important? This is a trick question. Or is it?
Live, laugh, love. Yeah, I think it was Alexander the Great when he was moving into northern Africa. He said, Vini, Vidi, Vigi, or something like that. No, that's, I'm just, part of my shtick is pretending to be a complete ignoramus when it comes to some of that stuff. I mean, I don't really know how to pronounce everything in terms of ship names, but I've kind of embraced it. So I was doing that when the Italian update was coming out. That's why that's out there. But no, my approach to this whole thing, I just try and have fun. I do my own thing, and luckily for me, people seem to enjoy it and kind of like to hang out with me when I'm streaming or tune into the videos or whatever. So that's what makes this fun from my perspective.
Well, so is there any chance we're going to see your name up there in the new arena mode?
That's an interesting question. I haven't actually tried it out yet. I know Mark White seems like he's firmly entrenched in the #1 spot. I've seen. I don't know. I'll probably try and play it. Maybe one of my streams over this weekend, we'll try that mode out and see how it is.
Good luck for that, and I hope you do much better than myself. And trying to tell with Mark White, it's going to be difficult. I think he's close to 9 million. That guy's completely nuts. But overall, thank you so much for joining us, Tbull, and spending this time with us and explaining everything. It's been a real joy having you, and we'd like to have you again in the future.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a blast talking with you, and I appreciate you having me on.
This is RoguePLC. Stay safe and sail safe.